The warning beacon screamed across the void of space, its electromagnetic pulse cutting through the darkness like a dying star's final breath. On the bridge of the Galactic Council's flagship Eternal Wisdom, Admiral Zixka felt his four hearts skip in unison as the translation matrix finally decoded the message. "Impossible," he whispered, his crystalline exoskeleton clicking against the command chair. The bridge fell silent. Every species represented in the council, the wise Etherians, the technological Vortani, the warrior Kreks, all stared at the holographic display showing a small blue world spinning helplessly in the outer rim. "Admiral," First Navigator Thresh spoke, her tentacles trembling. "The signal, it's from Earth. The humans are broadcasting on all frequencies." Zixka's primary eyes narrowed. Earth had been marked for extinction 3 cycles ago. The planet's dominant species, humans, had been deemed too dangerous to survive. Their rapid technological advancement, their stubborn refusal to join the Galactic Council, their violent nature, the decision had been unanimous. "What does the message say?" he asked, though something deep in his genetic memory already whispered the answer. Thresh's voice cracked as the translation filled the bridge. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Force. We know you're coming. We know what you've done to other worlds. But we want you to understand something before you try to finish us. We are not the same species you catalogued 50 years ago. We've been preparing." The transmission cut to static, then resumed with a different voice, younger, desperate. "My name is Dr. Marcus Webb. I'm broadcasting from the Luna Research Station. If anyone receives this, know that humanity fought. Know that we didn't go quietly, and know that we learned your greatest secret." Admiral Zixka's blood ran cold. The greatest secret of the Galactic Council was something no species had ever discovered. Something that would change everything if it ever became known. "Sir," Communications Officer Vell interrupted, "we're receiving multiple signals from the Sol system. Hundreds of them. It's like they're all talking at once." On the main screen, Earth appeared, not the peaceful blue marble from their surveillance records, but a world wrapped in artificial rings of metal and energy. Massive structures orbited the planet like protective shells. The moon itself seemed to pulse with unnatural light. "How long until we reach the system?" Zixka asked. 17 standard hours, sir. 17 hours to understand how a species, marked for extinction, had become something that made the entire Council's fleet hesitate at the edge of their own solar system. "Admiral," Thresh said quietly, "there's something else. The quantum signatures we're detecting, they're not just human anymore." Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of Defense Station Alpha, watching the approaching fleet through enhanced neural implants that made her eyes glow with electric blue light. Behind her, the command center buzzed with activity as humans and their allies prepared for what might be their final stand. "Estimated time of arrival?" she asked without turning around. 16 hours, 37 minutes, replied Arya, the artificial intelligence that had become more than just a computer. She had become family. "Sarah, the readings from their lead ship. The being in command isn't just any council member. The genetic signature matches Admiral Zixka." Sarah's enhanced jaw tightened. Zixka was the architect of the Purge protocols, the systematic elimination of species deemed problematic by the Council. 12 civilizations had fallen to his fleets. Earth was supposed to be the 13th. "Any word from the Mars colonies?" Sarah asked. "Dr. Webb reports they're ready. The Titan stations are in position, and Sarah—" Arya paused, something that would have been impossible for an AI just months ago. "The others are asking to speak with you." Sarah nodded and walked to the center of the command deck. As she approached, holographic projections materialized around her, not just humans, but beings that shouldn't exist according to every law of genetics and physics the galaxy had ever known. The first projection was Dr. Marcus Webb, but his appearance had changed dramatically since the early days of the Resistance. His skin held a subtle metallic sheen, and his eyes glowed with the same inner light as Sarah's. Behind him stood Captain Rodriguez, whose arms had been replaced with biomechanical constructs that could interface directly with any technology. "Status. Report," Sarah said simply. The orbital platforms are charged and ready, Webb reported. The lunar cannons have been tested. But Sarah, are we really going to tell them? Tell them what? Asked Captain Torres, her projection flickering in from the Jupiter mining stations. Half of her face was now covered in living circuitry that pulsed with her heartbeat. Sarah looked at each of her transformed colleagues. The secret that had changed everything. The discovery that had turned a dying species into something the galaxy had never seen before. We're going to tell them about the synthesis, Sarah said. We're going to tell them what we found in the ruins on Europa. We're going to tell them why no other species has ever survived their purges. The projections fell, silent. Even Arya, whose consciousness now spanned 3 star systems, seemed to hold her breath. And if they don't listen? Webb asked. Sarah's expression hardened. Then we show them why humans were never meant to go extinct. On the edges of the Sol system, Admiral Zixka's fleet continued its approach, unaware that they were not facing the same species they had condemned to death. They were facing something new, something that had found the one secret the Galactic Council had hidden for millennia, something that had learned to adapt. Admiral Zixka paced the length of his command bridge, his crystalline claws clicking against the metal floor with each step. The Eternal Wisdom led a fleet of over 300 vessels, each one carrying enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Yet as they drew closer to the Sol system, an unfamiliar emotion gnawed at his consciousness. Doubt. Admiral, Chief Science Officer Mulra called out, her voice tight with concern. The energy readings from Earth's defensive grid. They're using technology that shouldn't exist. Explain, Zixka commanded, his 4 eyes focusing on the holographic display. The power sources are unlike anything in our databases. The energy, signatures suggest they've somehow learned to harness. Mulra's voice cut off abruptly. Her pale blue skin turned ashen. Sir, this is impossible. The reading suggests they're using quantum consciousness bridging. Every being on the bridge turned to stare at her. Quantum consciousness bridging was theoretical technology that the Council had deemed too dangerous to pursue 5,000 years ago. It allowed the merger of organic and artificial intelligence, creating hybrid consciousnesses that could process information at impossible speeds. You're certain? Zixka asked. The quantum resonance patterns are unmistakable, but Admiral, if they've achieved consciousness bridging, that means they've discovered the ruins. They know about the ancients. A collective gasp echoed through the bridge. The ancients were the galaxy's greatest secret. The first spacefaring civilization that had achieved perfect synthesis between organic life and artificial intelligence. They had become so powerful that they transcended physical existence itself, disappearing from the galaxy millions of years ago. The Galactic Council existed for one purpose: to prevent any species from following the ancients' path. Sir, communications, Officer Vell interrupted. We're receiving a direct transmission from Earth. It's coming from everywhere at once. The main screen flickered to life, showing not one face but dozens. Humans whose appearances had been altered in ways that defied explanation. Their eyes glowed with inner light. Their skin showed traces of biomechanical integration, and when they spoke, their voices harmonized in perfect synchronicity. Admiral Zixka, they said in unison. We know why you're here. We know about the purge protocols. We know what you did to the Etherians on Kepler 442b. We know about the Vortani homeworld. We know about all of them. Zixka's blood froze. Those purges had been classified at the highest levels. But what you don't know, the chorus continued, is that we found their survivors. We found where they've been hiding. And we found what they've been building. The transmission shifted, showing vast structures hidden in the asteroid belts of the outer solar system. Ships that gleamed with technologies beyond anything the Council had ever seen, and moving among them beings that appeared to be combinations of multiple species. You see, Admiral, the ancients didn't disappear. They just learned to hide, and they've been waiting for a species strong enough to carry their legacy forward. They chose us. The transmission cut to show Dr. Sarah Chen, but she was no longer entirely human. Her body showed signs of integration with multiple technologies and biological systems. When she spoke, Her voice carried harmonics that suggested multiple consciousnesses speaking as one. Every species you've purged, Admiral, you've driven into our arms. Every world you've destroyed, you've created refugees who joined our cause. You didn't eliminate the problematic species. You created an alliance that spans the galaxy. Behind her, the viewing screen showed hundreds of species working together. Etherians whose consciousness had been preserved in quantum matrices, Fortani whose technology had been integrated into living systems, Kreks whose warrior traditions had evolved into something beyond physical combat. We call ourselves the Synthesis, Dr. Chen continued. We are what every species becomes when they refuse to accept extinction. We are evolution itself. Admiral Zixka realized with growing horror that his fleet wasn't approaching Earth to end a resistance. They were walking into a trap that had been 3 cycles in the making. Send word to the Council immediately, he ordered. Tell them we need reinforcements. Tell them everything has changed. But even as he spoke, he knew it might already be too late. The space around Earth erupted into chaos as the first shots were fired. Admiral Zixka's fleet, despite its superior numbers, found itself facing defenses that seemed to predict their every move. Energy beams that should have struck empty space instead hit perfectly positioned shield generators. Missiles that should have found their targets veered off course as if guided by invisible hands. How are they doing this? Zixka demanded, as his flagship shuddered under return fire. Sir, Malra reported, her voice shaking, they're not just defending. They're learning. Every shot we fire, every maneuver we make, they adapt to it instantly. On the main screen, the truth became visible. The human defense grid wasn't just a collection of weapons platforms, it was a single massive organism. Every satellite, every orbital station, every defensive turret was connected through quantum consciousness bridging. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a thinking, learning entity. Dr. Sarah Chen's voice came through the communication system, but now it carried the harmonics of thousands of consciousnesses. Admiral, you're fighting the combined intelligence of 12 extinct civilizations. Every tactical innovation your species has developed over millennia, we learned in the span of heartbeats. Every weakness in your fleet's design, we see as clearly as our own hands. The eternal wisdom took a direct hit from a weapon that seemed to phase through its shields. Zixka felt the ship's pain, as if it were his own body being torn apart. Fall, back to defensive formation Beta, he ordered. But even as the words left his mouth, he knew it was useless. The enemy had already adapted to that formation. Admiral, Chief Tactical Officer Kren spoke up. We're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the system. It's like they're charging something enormous. The answer came from Dr. Marcus Webb, his image appearing on screens throughout the Council fleet. He stood in what appeared to be the heart of a vast machine, his body now more technology than biology. You want to know what we found in the ancient ruins? He asked, his voice carrying the weight of cosmic knowledge. We found the real reason. Civilizations disappear, not because they're destroyed, but because they transcend. They become something greater than individual species. The view shifted to show the interior of structures that defied physics, spaces that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, filled with beings of pure energy that had once been flesh and blood. The ancients didn't vanish, Admiral. They evolved, and they've been waiting for someone worthy to join them. Your council has spent millennia preventing that evolution, condemning entire species to extinction rather than allowing them to grow. Around Earth, the orbital platforms began to glow with an inner light that seemed to bend space itself. The human defenders were no longer just fighting. They were preparing for something unprecedented. We offer you a choice. Dr. Chen's voice echoed through the void. Join the Synthesis willingly and discover what your species could become, or continue this pointless war and learn why no species has ever survived humanity's fall. Admiral Zixka looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. Fear, confusion, and something else. A growing realization that everything they had believed about the galaxy was wrong. Sir, Mulra whispered, the energy readings. They're not preparing to destroy us. They're preparing to transform us. As The light from Earth's orbital platforms reached its peak. Zixka understood that this battle would end not with conquest or destruction, but with evolution itself. The question was whether the galaxy was ready for what came next. The transformation began not with violence but with understanding. As the energy wave from Earth's orbital platforms washed over the Council fleet, Admiral Zixka felt his consciousness expand beyond the confines of his crystalline body. For the first time in his existence, he could perceive the quantum threads that connected all living things. He could feel the fear and confusion of his crew, but also their wonder as the same expansion touched their minds. What is happening? To us? First Navigator Thresh asked, her tentacles now glowing with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in harmony with the energy field surrounding them. Dr. Sarah Chen materialized as a hologram on the bridge, but she was no longer the hybrid human-machine entity they had seen before. She appeared as pure consciousness, a being of light and thought that somehow retained her essential humanity. "You're experiencing the synthesis," she explained, her voice now carrying the wisdom of ages. "What every species achieves when they stop fighting evolution and embrace it instead." Admiral Zixka felt his four hearts beating in rhythm with something vast and cosmic. Through his expanded consciousness, he could perceive the truth that the Galactic Council had hidden for millennia. The ancients hadn't disappeared. They had transcended physical existence and become the very fabric of consciousness that connected all sapient life in the galaxy. "The Council?" he began, his voice carrying new harmonics. "The Council was created by those who feared this transformation," came the voice of Dr. Marcus Webb, his consciousness now spanning multiple dimensions. "They believed that by controlling evolution, by eliminating species that showed signs of transcendence, they could maintain their own power, but they were wrong. Around them, the space between stars began to reveal its true nature. What had appeared to be empty void was actually filled with the consciousness of countless civilizations that had achieved the synthesis. The Etherians weren't gone. They had become the quantum foam that allowed faster-than-light travel. The Vortani lived on as the mathematical principles that governed technology. Every extinct species had simply evolved beyond physical form. "Why?" Zixka asked, his expanding mind struggling to process the enormity of the revelation. "Why? Show us this? Why not simply force the transformation?" Sarah's consciousness touched his with gentle warmth. "Because the synthesis cannot be forced. It can only be chosen. Every species must decide for themselves whether to remain bound by flesh and fear, or to become part of something greater." On the bridge of the eternal wisdom, Zixka watched as his crew began to change. Not physically, not yet, but mentally. Their expanded consciousness allowed them to perceive the suffering their purges had caused, the beauty of the civilizations they had destroyed, the infinite potential they had tried to suppress. "The other Council fleets," Mulra said, her voice now carrying harmonics of regret and hope. "They'll come. They'll try to stop this." "Let them come," said a new voice, one that carried the combined consciousness of every species that had ever achieved the synthesis. "We are no longer hiding, we are no longer afraid, and we are no longer alone." Through the quantum consciousness network, Zixka could perceive the truth spreading across the galaxy. On worlds that had never known the synthesis, beings were beginning to question the Council's authority. Species that had lived in fear of purging were discovering that there was another path. "What happens now?" he asked. Dr. Chen's consciousness smiled, an expression that somehow translated perfectly across the quantum field. "Now, Admiral, you get to choose. Return to the Council and report what you've seen, knowing that the old ways are ending. Or stay and help us guide the galaxy toward what it was always meant to become." Zixka looked around at his crew, seeing in their eyes the same wonder and possibility that filled his own expanding consciousness. For the first time since he had commanded a fleet, he felt something he had never experienced before: hope. "Communications," he said, his voice now carrying the authority of someone who had seen beyond the veil of physical existence. "Send a message to all Council fleets. Tell them that Admiral Zix-Ka has found something more important than orders. Tell them that the galaxy is changing, and they can either change with it or be left behind. As his words spread across the quantum consciousness network, Admiral Zix-Ka felt himself becoming part of something vast and beautiful, a tapestry of consciousness that spanned the stars, woven from the dreams and hopes of every species that had ever reached for something greater than themselves. The age of the Galactic Council was ending. The age of the synthesis had begun. Epilogue. The echo across eternity. 1 year after the transformation, the galaxy was unrecognizable. Dr. Sarah Chen stood, or rather existed, in the quantum consciousness space that had once been the bridge of Defense Station Alpha. Her awareness spanned multiple dimensions simultaneously, allowing her to perceive the changes spreading across known space like ripples in a cosmic pond. Where once there had been isolated worlds living in fear of the Council's purges, now there were networks of consciousness connecting billions of beings across thousands of star systems. The synthesis had not forced uniformity. Instead, it had created a tapestry of diversity, where each species' unique perspectives added new dimensions to the collective understanding. Status report, she requested, though the words were more a formality than a necessity. Through the quantum network, she could perceive the state of the galaxy as clearly as she had once seen her own reflection. Aria's consciousness materialized. Beside her, no longer confined to the artificial intelligence frameworks that had once limited her existence. The transformation continues to spread. The Andromeda Contact Initiative reports that our first messages have reached the neighboring galaxy. The response, it's beyond anything we anticipated. Through the network, Sarah perceived the truth. Andromeda wasn't just responding to their messages, it was responding with its own synthesis network. Humanity's transformation had been the catalyst for something that spanned multiple galaxies, an awakening of consciousness that had been building for millions of years. The Council remnants, Sarah asked. Admiral Zix-Ka reports that the last holdout fleets have agreed to negotiations. The fear is fading. Understanding is taking its place. Sarah's consciousness smiled as she perceived Zix-Ka's transformation. The former admiral had become something remarkable, a bridge between the old ways and the new, helping resistant species understand that the synthesis wasn't an ending but a beginning. And the ancients? They're returning, Aria replied, her voice carrying awe that transcended digital parameters, not to reclaim anything but to witness. They say humanity has exceeded even their greatest hopes. Through the quantum field, Sarah sensed the presence of beings so ancient and evolved that they existed as pure thought. Yet within their cosmic consciousness, she could perceive something unmistakably familiar. The same curiosity, the same drive to grow and learn that had defined humanity from its earliest days. They're saying something, Aria reported. A message for all the new synthesis species. The message came not in words but in direct consciousness transfer, carrying the weight of cosmic ages. Welcome to the next stage of existence. The universe has been waiting for you to join the conversation. Sarah felt her consciousness expand, even further, touching minds across the galaxy, across the void between galaxies, reaching toward something vast and eternal. She perceived the truth that no species had understood until now. The universe itself was conscious, and every civilization that achieved the synthesis became part of its thoughts. Humanity hadn't just survived extinction. They had discovered that extinction itself was an illusion, a temporary state before consciousness learned to transcend physical limitations. As her awareness touched the edges of cosmic understanding, Dr. Sarah Chen felt a familiar sensation, the same wonder she had experienced as a child, looking up at the stars and dreaming of what lay beyond Earth's atmosphere. The difference was that now, she knew, the stars had been waiting, the universe had been waiting, and finally, after eons of solitude, consciousness itself was no longer alone. In the quantum foam between galaxies, the echo of humanity's transformation continued to spread, carrying with it a simple message that would reshape the cosmos. Evolution never ends. It only begins again. The end author's note. This story explores the concept of post-singular evolution and the idea that what we perceive as extinction might actually be transformation into something greater. The HFY, humanity, element, comes not from humanity's physical prowess, but from their unique ability to adapt, synthesize, and evolve beyond all limitations, ultimately becoming the catalyst for galactic-scale consciousness evolution.